The vast, star-filled expanse of the galaxy stretched out before the enormous windows of the Council's chamber. Captain Elias stood tall, his boots echoing softly as he walked toward the central platform. The chamber was a grand structure, a place where species from all across the galaxy met to discuss matters of power, politics, and control. The walls were adorned with intricate symbols of the many civilizations that made up the Galactic Council. A sense of weight hung in the air as if every moment inside this room shaped the fate of the stars themselves. Elias, a human, stood out in this room filled with towering aliens of various shapes, sizes, and colors. His presence, though seemingly small among the many leaders of the galaxy, commanded attention. He had been chosen to represent Earth, a planet that had once been a backwater in the vast universe. Now humanity had risen to become a force to be reckoned with. The Council, however, saw humans as newcomers, unknown, unpredictable, and potentially dangerous. As Elias stepped into the center of the room, the murmurs of the alien delegates quieted. Their eyes, many of them cold and calculating, fixed on him. Elias met their gaze with calm confidence. He had seen the galaxy's horrors, the wars, the betrayals, the lies, and yet, here he was, representing his people with unwavering resolve. He had fought too hard for this moment to falter now. The council chamber was a meeting of power, but Elias wasn't here to play their game. He had come to challenge it. At the far end of the room, the speaker of the council, a towering, multi-limbed alien named Railtak, rose. His deep voice filled the space.
"Captain Elias of Earth," Railtak began, his tone skeptical. "You stand here before us, not as an ally, but as a representative of a species that has barely survived its first interstellar war. Tell us, why should we trust your people?"
With the future of the galaxy? The room fell silent. The question was a challenge, not just to Elias, but to humanity as a whole. The Council had ruled for centuries, and their authority was unchallenged. They had little patience for new species, especially ones like humans, who had a tendency to fight their way through every challenge. Elias took a step forward, his gaze unwavering. "I don't ask for trust, Railtak," he said, his voice steady. "I ask for respect. Humanity has survived countless challenges not because of luck but because of our resolve, our unity, and our ability to adapt. We may be new to the stars, but we are not weak." A ripple of surprise passed through the room. Some of the alien leaders exchanged looks. In many ways, humans were still seen as an unknown variable in the galaxy. Their rapid growth, their ingenuity, and their unexpected victories had shaken the old powers. Many had hoped that they could control humanity or at the very least keep them in check. But Elias's words were like a spark in dry wood. His voice rang clear through the chamber, echoing in the minds of the delegates. This human was not like the others they had encountered. This was a leader, a captain, someone who had the power to shape the galaxy's future. Railtak's eyes narrowed. "Respect is earned, Captain. It is not granted freely. Your species has yet to prove itself beyond your wars and conflicts. You claim to have unity, but your history suggests otherwise." The words stung, but Elias did not flinch. "Every species has its flaws, Railtak, but we've learned from our mistakes, and in the darkest moments we've come together when it mattered most. If you cannot see that, then perhaps you do not understand the true strength of humanity." A low murmur spread through the council. Elias's words were striking a chord with some, though others remained unconvinced. It was clear that the human representative was not afraid to stand up for his people. Yet, for every ally Elias might find in the room, there were those who viewed him as a threat, a new species that had shown far too much potential in too little time. The speaker of the council raised a hand, silencing the room. His voice was slow and deliberate. "We will see if your actions match your words, Captain Elias. The galaxy is a delicate balance. If you or your people disrupt it, you will find that the Council has ways to correct such imbalances." Elias's heart did not race. He had faced threats far greater than this in his time. The Council was powerful, yes, but they were not invincible. If anything, their arrogance and their centuries of unchecked power made them vulnerable. He knew that they feared change, and he was a symbol of that change. "I don't seek to disrupt the balance, Railtuck," Elias said, his voice firm. "I seek to be part of it. Humanity doesn't need your permission to exist in this galaxy, but we do ask for the chance to prove that we can contribute, that we can fight for something greater than ourselves." For a moment, the room was silent, the tension palpable. The other leaders of the council were watching closely, trying to read Elias's every word, every movement. Some were skeptical, others intrigued. But all knew one thing: the galaxy was changing, and humans were at the center of that change. The speaker's eyes flickered with a mix of disdain and curiosity. "We shall see, Captain. We shall see." Elias turned, ready to leave the chamber, but he felt the weight of 1,000 gazes upon him. He knew that his presence here was more than a simple diplomatic mission. It was a challenge, to the council, to the galaxy, to the old ways of thinking, and most of all to the notion that humanity had no place among the stars. As he stepped out of the council chamber, the doors closing behind him with a heavy thud, Elias's thoughts were already turning to the next steps. The council had just made their first move. Now it was time for humanity to make theirs. This should capture the essence of the tension and drama, while also setting the stage for the larger conflict. Let me know if you'd like any further revisions or additions. The council chamber was silent after Captain Elias's bold declaration. The atmosphere hung heavy, filled with an unspoken tension. Elias had returned to his quarters, away from the watchful eyes of the council. Outside, the stars twinkled quietly in the vast expanse of space, but inside, the calm was an illusion. He could feel the eyes of the galaxy upon him. Every word, every move, every decision mattered now. Captain Elias sat by the small window of his room, looking out at the stars. His mind raced. The council, a gathering of the galaxy's most powerful leaders, had their own secrets. They were not the unified noble force they pretended to be. He had seen enough to know that. It wasn't just the stories whispered in the dark corners of space. Elias had discovered firsthand how the council manipulated the weaker species, using them as tools for their endless expansion. Elias wasn't just here to represent humanity. He had come with a purpose: to expose the corruption that ran deep in the council. He wasn't naive enough to think that a few words could change the galaxy, but he had to start somewhere. The galaxy needed to know the truth. The first day after the meeting, Elias was summoned again. This time it was not for a formal session. Instead, a quiet messenger arrived at his quarters, handing him a data chip. "The speaker wishes for you to look at this," the messenger said in a hushed tone, then quickly left, disappearing into the corridors of the council's massive headquarters. Elias inserted the chip into his terminal, and the screen flickered to life. It was a set of encrypted files, documents that had been hidden from the public eye. As Elias scrolled through the files, his blood began to boil. There it was. Proof of what he had suspected all along. The council had manipulated entire systems, shifting political power in their favor by creating artificial shortages, rigging elections, and even destroying civilizations that stood in their way. They had played one species against another, all to maintain control over the galaxy's resources. Entire populations had been enslaved or wiped out because they posed a threat to the council's dominance. One document stood out: a report detailing a covert operation called the Purge. The council had wiped out a peaceful, technologically advanced race that posed no military threat. The reason for the massacre? They had developed a technology that could challenge the council's hold on power. This race had been a peaceful species, dedicated to the study of the stars, but the council feared their knowledge. The report was clear: they had to be eliminated. Elias leaned back in his chair, his fists clenched. The council had made its power base by wiping out anyone who posed a threat to their authority. They had destroyed entire worlds to keep their control intact. This wasn't the peaceful alliance they pretended to be. This was a cartel of power-hungry despots, and humans were just the next species in line to be manipulated. But Elias also saw something else in the data: cracks. The council's grip was slipping. Some of the higher-ranking members, once the staunchest supporters of the regime, had begun questioning their own actions. There were whispers of rebellion, of factions forming within the council itself. Some leaders no longer trusted the speaker, and rumors spread of secret alliances with dissident factions. Elias knew he couldn't confront the council directly, not yet. He needed allies, not just among the humans, but also from the other oppressed species. It was time to reach out to let others know the truth of what the council was doing. The next morning, Elias set out to meet with some of the leaders of the Galactic Fringe. These were species and colonies that were rarely invited to the council's grand halls, dismissed as too weak or too far removed from the center of power. They had no voice in the galaxy's politics, but Elias knew they were the key to changing the tide. They were the ones who had felt the council's weight most keenly. They were the ones who had nothing left to lose. He arranged a secret meeting in a hidden location, a small private room beneath the bustling markets of a distant world. It was a neutral space, far away from the prying eyes of the council. Elias arrived early, the hum of the city streets above faint through the walls. Slowly, the others began to arrive. The first was a Catron diplomat, a tall figure with leathery blue skin and sharp, intelligent eyes. Then came an emissary from the Narel system, a race of beings with elongated limbs and a deep, haunting intelligence. Others followed, representatives from scattered colonies, all hidden from the view of the council. Captain Elias, the Catron leader, greeted him, his voice deep and formal. "We've heard whispers, but we did not know the full extent of the council's actions." Elias wasted no time. "I have the evidence," he said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "The council is corrupt. They've been manipulating us all, sowing division for their own gain. They control the galaxy by creating chaos, and they will stop at nothing to keep their power." The room was silent for a long moment. The representatives exchanged glances, clearly shocked but not entirely surprised. They had known something was wrong, but Elias's words confirmed their worst fears. "We are ready to fight," said the Narel emissary. "But we cannot do it alone. The council's reach is vast. They control the military, the trade routes, the communications. To go against them, we need more than just evidence. We need a plan." Elias nodded. "I agree. We must unite. We need to show the galaxy the truth. Once the people know what the council has done, they won't be able to hide behind their lies anymore." It was a delicate proposition. Elias knew the risks. The council's reach was powerful, and anyone who stood against them would face swift retaliation. But he also knew that now, with the evidence in hand, the time had come. The seeds of rebellion had been planted, and it was up to him to water them. "We need to expose the council to the galaxy," Elias continued. "Once the truth is out, we can turn the people against them. The galaxy has suffered long enough under their rule." The representatives nodded in agreement. One by one, they pledged their support. They would work together, sharing information, rallying their people, and preparing for the day when the council would fall. As the meeting came to a close, Elias looked at each of the leaders. He saw the fear in their eyes, but also something else. Hope. Hope that they could change the galaxy. Hope that they could bring an end to the council's reign of terror. But Elias knew the truth. The battle had only just begun. The council was powerful, and they wouldn't go down without a fight. And yet, for the first time, he truly believed that change was possible. The galaxy was on the brink of a new era, one where the people would no longer be controlled by those who hid in the shadows. It was a risky path, but Elias was ready to take it. And for better or worse, he was going to lead the charge. This part dives deeper into the dark secrets of the council and sets the stage for the beginning of rebellion. Let me know if you want any further changes. The days following Elias's secret meeting with the rebel leaders felt like a whirlwind. The galaxy was alive with whispers, the air thick with uncertainty. He had given them the truth, and now the factions within the council were stirring. Elias could feel the shift, like a wave building just beneath the surface, ready to break. Yet, the council was not without its own set of powerful players. They were aware of the growing discontent among their ranks, and they would not let it slip away without retaliation. Elias sat in his quarters, his mind swirling with the plans he had discussed with the rebel leaders. His connection to the other factions had grown stronger. He had faith that they would rise against the council. But now, he needed to solidify their efforts, and that meant taking the fight to the heart of the council's power. He had been summoned, once more to the council chamber. This time, however, it wasn't to answer questions. It wasn't to represent humanity's future. This time it felt different. Something was off. As Elias entered the council chamber, the familiar hum of tension filled the room. The speaker, Realtek, sat at the head of the table, flanked by the most influential figures of the council. There was a new addition today, a tall, elegant alien from the Y-Track system named Makar. He had once been an ally of Elias, a quiet but powerful supporter of the idea of peace and cooperation among the galaxy's species. Makar's cold gaze met Elias's as he entered, and something in the way he stared sent a chill through Elias's chest. "Captain Elias," Realtek began with his usual deep voice, "we are here today to discuss the matters that have come to light regarding your accusations. You have chosen to accuse us of corruption, of manipulation, and of controlling the galaxy for our own gain. You have made a dangerous mistake, one that will not go unpunished." Elias held his ground. "I've only revealed the truth, Realtek, and truth, no matter how dangerous, cannot be hidden forever." Realtek's gaze hardened, but it was the quiet presence of Makar that caught Elias's attention. The E-Track's leader's expression remained unreadable, and yet Elias could see something more, something beneath the calm exterior. Makar was one of the few beings Elias had respected, a being of reason and wisdom. That respect, however, was now shattered as the realization slowly crept over him. He had been betrayed. "Are you accusing me of a mistake, Captain?" Realtek sneered, leaning forward. "It is you who has failed to recognize the delicate balance of power. You come here with your naive idealism, expecting the galaxy to bend to your will. But we will not let that happen." Elias did not back down. "The galaxy is not yours to control, Realtek, and I will make sure that the galaxy knows the truth, no matter what it costs." Before Realtek could reply, Makar stood, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the chamber. He approached Elias, his voice softer but still firm. "You are wrong, Elias," Makar said. "The Council is not your enemy. We've worked together for peace, for balance. But your actions, your words, threaten to undo everything we've built." Elias's heart sank as Makar's words hit him like a blow. He had trusted Makar. He had believed that the I-Track's leader stood with him in the fight for justice. But now, standing in front of him, Makar seemed distant, his loyalty no longer clear. "You've already made your choice, haven't you?" Elias asked, his voice quiet. "You've sided with them." Makar hesitated, and in that moment, Elias knew the truth. The leader of the E-Track system had been working behind the scenes not to expose the Council's dark deeds, but to protect his own interests. His public support for Elias had been nothing more than a ruse, a way to stay in favor with the rising human movement, to gain leverage for himself. Makar finally nodded, his expression cold. "I am not your enemy, Elias, but neither am I your ally. The Council has its reasons. There are forces at play that you do not understand. You have no idea what you're up against." A knot tightened in Elias's chest. The betrayal was complete. Makar was not the ally he had once thought. He was just another player in the Council's game, one who had chosen his side long ago. The realization was a sharp sting, but Elias didn't have time to dwell on it. Makar's betrayal would not stop him. He had come this far, and he wasn't about to back down now. The message he had sent out to the galaxy was clear. Humanity would not be silenced no matter the cost. Without saying another word, Elias turned to leave the chamber. But as he reached the doors, he heard Realtek's voice call after him. "You are making a grave mistake, Captain. The Council will not tolerate rebellion. If you continue down this path, you will face the full wrath of the galaxy." Elias paused at the door, his hand resting on the cool surface. He didn't turn around to face them. Instead, he spoke over his shoulder, his voice low but full of resolve. "You are wrong, Ryltak. The Council's reign is over, and you will learn too late that the people of the galaxy will no longer follow your lies." With that, he left the chamber, the doors sliding shut behind him. Outside, in the dim corridors of the Council's headquarters, Elias's mind was racing. The betrayal stung, but it had also solidified his mission. He couldn't trust the Council, and he couldn't trust the leaders like Makar who had secretly aligned themselves with them. He had to move forward alone, or with only the true allies who were willing to risk everything for freedom. Back in the privacy of his quarters, Elias activated a secure communication link. He needed to speak with his allies, to rally them for the next phase. It was time to go on the offensive. The betrayal of Makar had changed everything. The galaxy was not going to be an easy battlefield. Elias knew that. But he also knew one undeniable truth. The galaxy had been set on fire, and nothing would put out the flames now. This part reveals a deep sense of betrayal, shifting Elias's focus and forcing him to confront the challenges ahead. Let me know if you'd like to make any adjustments. Captain Elias stood in the dark command room of the rebel outpost, far from the golden towers of the Galactic Council. Around him, screens flickered with maps, coded messages, and incoming reports. The air was thick with urgency. The betrayal of Makar had shaken Elias, but it had also cleared his path. There would be no more peace talks, no more trusting the old powers. It was time to fight. The Council had labeled Elias a traitor. They sent messages across the galaxy, warning other species not to follow him. They called him a danger to peace, but their words did not reach every ear. In the shadows of the galaxy, many had suffered under the Council's rule. Farmers on dying worlds, workers from mining colonies, and soldiers forgotten after the wars the Council started and abandoned. These people did not see Elias as a traitor. They saw him as hope. Inside the rebel base, Elias gathered with the leaders of the resistance. The Katran warrior chief, the Gnarl diplomat, and others sat around a circular table. Each leader had scars, some on their bodies, others on their hearts. They had lost family, freedom, and futures because of the Council. Now they were ready to rise. "We can't fight them head-on," said the Katran, his deep voice like thunder. "Their fleets are too large. Their spies are everywhere." Elias nodded. "We won't attack like they expect. We hit fast, we hit hard, and we give people a reason to believe." He tapped a control pad and a hologram appeared above the table, a map of the Council's inner trade routes. "These are their lifelines," Elias explained. "We take out their supply chains, disrupt their communication relays, free the prisons where they hold dissenters." The Gnarl diplomat leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "And once we show them the Council is not untouchable?" Elias didn't hesitate. "Then we light the fire everywhere." The room fell quiet. Each leader understood the risk, but they also understood what was at stake. The galaxy could not survive another 100 years of the Council's rule. Later that night, Elias stood on a balcony outside the command center, staring up at the stars. So many systems, so many people still trapped under the Council's control. His thoughts drifted to Earth, to the mountains where he trained, to the oceans his people once feared would drown them, to the cities that now reached for the sky. Earth had changed, and so had humanity. Now, they had the strength to change the galaxy. The first mission was already in motion. A group of rebels, led by a young human pilot named Leon, had been sent to intercept a Council cargo ship delivering weapons to a distant outpost. The weapons weren't just for defense, they were meant to crush an uprising brewing on the outer edges of the Halrex system. Elias watched the live feed as Leon's small squad of ships approached the Council freighter. The battle was brief. Fast-moving rebel fighters disabled the engines of the transport without destroying the ship. The Council guards were stunned, but not killed. The cargo was seized, and the message was sent. Across the galaxy, The footage spread. A council ship had been captured, not destroyed, captured without bloodshed. It was a clean victory, but more importantly, it was a symbol. Within days, more systems began to rise. In the mining colonies of Dravon 6, workers refused to send shipments to the council. On Tyran 4, an old council prison was stormed by locals, who freed hundreds of innocent prisoners. On a small moon near the edge of known space, a group of students raised a new flag, not of a planet or a species, but of unity. The word freedom written in dozens of languages side by side. The council responded quickly. They sent battle cruisers. They tightened trade. They arrested anyone who even whispered Elias's name. But the more they tried to silence the people, the louder the rebellion became. Elias didn't celebrate. He knew this was only the beginning. Every small victory came with a price. The council's forces were strong, and they had not yet used their full power. But Elias also knew something else. The people were no longer afraid. Back at the rebel base, new volunteers arrived every day. Humans, aliens, engineers, medics, former council soldiers who had grown tired of following cruel orders. The base had to expand underground. New communication towers were built in secret. Rebel ships were hidden in asteroid belts waiting for orders. But it wasn't just weapons or fighters that Elias needed. It was unity. The galaxy had been divided for too long, by race, by wealth, by fear. The council had ruled by keeping everyone apart. Elias's true mission was not just to break the council's grip, but to bring the galaxy together. Only together could they build a new future. One night, Elias called a meeting with his closest allies. "We can't just destroy," he said, looking at each of them. "We must build. We need schools, hospitals, food. We must show the galaxy that we are not just another group hungry for power." The Narel diplomat smiled. "You don't want to become the next council." "Exactly," Elias replied. "We're not here to rule. We're here to return power to the people." They agreed, and so, alongside their battles, the rebellion began building. On freed planets, rebels helped farmers grow food again. Children returned to schools where teachers once feared speaking freely. Engineers repaired water systems long ignored. The rebellion was not just an army. It was a movement. But Elias knew something else too. The council would strike back harder. They would send their best fleets, their best spies, and maybe even worse. Still, he stood strong, because now, across the stars, the fire had started. Fire that could no longer be hidden. The galaxy was waking up. And Captain Elias, once a lone voice in a silent chamber, had become the spark that set everything in motion. The rebellion was spreading. Every day, more systems and species joined the cause, their voices rising in defiance of the Galactic Council's tyranny. Elias could feel the momentum building, but as the rebellion grew stronger, so did the council's resolve. They would not let their control slip away so easily. Elias stood before a massive hollow map in the war room of the rebel base, a map of the galaxy now dotted with growing red marks. These were the locations of rebel strongholds, victories, and skirmishes. The council's fleet had already begun to mobilize. Their massive warships, once thought untouchable, were now moving in an attempt to crush the rebellion. "We don't have the resources to go toe-to-toe with their fleet, Elias," said Leon, the young pilot who had become one of his most trusted commanders. She leaned over the holomap, her eyes scanning the data. "We need to strike fast and hit where it hurts the most." Elias nodded, his mind racing. He had always known this would come, the moment when the council would respond with full force. But the rebellion had grown too strong to back down now. If they were to win, they would need to act decisively. "Leon's right," Elias said, turning to the other commanders in the room. "We can't match their strength head-on, but we can force them to fight on our terms. We need to hit their supply lines, cut off their reinforcements, and we need to free more prisoners. Each one of them is a symbol, a message that we will not stop." The commanders nodded in agreement. Elias's plan was simple but daring. They would launch a series of surprise attacks on the council's supply routes, intercept key shipments, and liberate more worlds under their control. They would strike hard, fast, and then disappear back into the shadows. The goal wasn't to win one big battle, but to weaken the Council's grip, piece by piece. The first mission was a success. Rebel forces attacked a key Council supply convoy in the Aldrin system. They disabled the convoy's flagship without losing a single Rebel fighter. The Council lost a valuable shipment of weapons and resources, and their response was slow and chaotic. The message was clear. The rebellion could strike anywhere, anytime. As the days passed, the attacks became bolder. Rebel ships moved through asteroid fields and dense nebulae, using the galaxy's natural cover to remain hidden. They cut through Council communication networks, leaving entire sectors isolated from the rest of the galaxy. But each victory came at a cost. The Council retaliated, sending powerful warships to track down the rebels, burning entire planets in the process. Elias stood on the observation deck of the rebel base, watching the stars streak by. The battle was growing more intense, and he knew that soon the Council would launch a full-scale assault on their base. It was only a matter of time before they would have to face the full might of the Council's military. But Elias wasn't afraid. He had seen the strength of the people. The galaxy was no longer silent. The first major battle of the rebellion took place on the fringe world of Telcor. It was a small planet, but strategically important. The Council had built a massive military base there, one that would give them control over several vital trade routes. If the rebellion could take Telcor, they would deal a major blow to the Council's plans. Elias led the charge, his fleet of rebel ships moving swiftly through the void. The Council had fortified Telcor heavily, but the rebels had the advantage of surprise. They attacked at night when the planet's defenses were weakest. Rebel fighters soared through the atmosphere, dodging anti-aircraft fire as they rained down on the Council's ground forces. The battle was fierce. Explosions lit up the night sky, and the air was thick with smoke and fire. Elias's command ship led the charge, guiding the rebel fleet as they stormed the surface of the planet. The Council's forces fought back with everything they had, but they were not prepared for the coordinated strike of the rebels. On the ground, Elias's troops fought side by side with soldiers from the freed planets. The Gnarl soldiers, the Katran warriors, and the human rebels fought with a unity that had never existed before. The Council's soldiers, though powerful, were fragmented. They fought not for freedom but out of fear. That made all the difference. Elias's feet hit the ground first, leading the charge toward the heart of the Council's base. He moved quickly, cutting through enemy lines, his mind focused on the objective. The mission was clear. Take the command, center, destroy their communication hub, and send a message to the galaxy. Inside the base, the Council's command staff was in chaos. Their security systems had been hacked, their communications jammed. Panic spread as the rebels advanced. They had underestimated the power of unity, and now they were paying the price. Elias reached the control center just as the Council officers tried to flee. He raised his weapon, but before he could fire, the base commander stepped forward, a tall figure in heavy armor. He was the last of the Council's officers stationed on Telcor, and he was determined to make his stand. "You think you can change the galaxy, human?" The officer spat. "You're nothing but a grain of sand in a storm. The Council will crush you." Elias stepped forward, his expression unwavering. "The storm has already begun, and it's coming for you." With a single precise shot, Elias disabled the officer's weapon, sending him to the ground. The command center fell silent as the rebels secured the area. The battle for Telcor was over. The victory was a turning point. The Council's forces withdrew, their hold on the system broken. Rebel forces moved in to liberate the planet, and the people of Telcor hailed Elias and his fighters as heroes. News of the victory spread across the galaxy. Systems that had been hesitant to join the rebellion now saw the strength of the rebels. The message was clear. The Council's reign was faltering. It was no longer the unshakable power it once was, and humanity, once a small, insignificant species, had become the symbol of resistance. But Elias knew this was only one battle in a long war. The Council would not give up easily. they would strike back harder. The next battle would be even more dangerous. Still, Elias stood firm. He had led humanity to this point and he would not stop. The galaxy was no longer under the Council's control. The flames of rebellion had spread, and no force in the galaxy could put them out. The galaxy had been set on fire, and the flames of rebellion burned brighter with each passing day. After their hard-fought victory on Telcor, the rebels had gained more ground. Systems that had once been neutral now pledged their allegiance to the cause, and the once immovable council was starting to show cracks. Elias knew that the tides of war had turned, but he also knew that the council would not go down without a final fight. The council's response was swift and brutal. They gathered their fleets, their most powerful warships, and began moving toward the heart of the rebellion. Their target, the rebel stronghold, the last safe place where Elias and his forces could regroup, the moon of Yovara, a hidden sanctuary on the edge of the galaxy. Elias stood on the balcony of the command center on Yovara, staring at the stars. The weight of the upcoming battle pressed down on him like a heavy burden. They had no choice but to face the full might of the Council's fleet. The rebels had done well to survive this long, but Elias knew that the time for small victories was over. This would be the final confrontation. The galaxy would either fall under the Council's rule once more, or it would be free. He turned to the rebel commanders who stood behind him. Lian, the young pilot, had become a key leader in the rebellion. Her bravery had inspired many to join their cause, and now she would lead the fleet into battle. Beside her was the Katran warrior chief, his face hard as stone, ready to fight until his last breath. The gnarled diplomat, usually calm and collected, now looked determined. Everyone was ready, but Elias could sense the fear beneath the surface. This was their moment, but it was also their greatest risk. "We've held them off before," Elias said, his voice steady. "But this time we won't just be defending. We'll make our stand. We'll show the Council that we won't bow down, that the people of the galaxy are no longer afraid." Lian nodded. "We're ready, Captain. We've trained for this. If we win today, we can change the galaxy forever." Elias nodded, his eyes narrowing as he turned toward the fleet in orbit. Hundreds of ships, big and small, now floated above, the moon of Yovara. Some were stolen Council ships repurposed by the rebels. Others were hastily constructed from scrap materials, but all were ready to fight. In the distance, the Council's fleet was approaching, their massive warships casting long shadows across the stars. It would be a battle like no other. The rebel forces took their positions, their ships aligning in formation. Elias's ship, the Phoenix, led the charge, its engines roaring to life as it moved into position. He took one last look at Yovara below, the home they had fought for, the symbol of everything they had gained. The Council fleet arrived, their ships descending from the darkness of space. The sheer size of the fleet was overwhelming, but Elias's resolve was stronger. They had come too far to back down now. "We're going in," Elias said, his voice steady despite the tension building inside him. "Remember, we fight for freedom, for every world they've oppressed, for every person they've silenced." The first shot was fired by the Council's flagship, the Dominion, a massive vessel that had been the symbol of their power for centuries. It unleashed a barrage of laser fire, cutting through the darkness like a wave of destruction. The rebel fleet responded quickly, firing back with everything they had. The sky was lit with explosions, flashes of light and fire. Elias's heart raced as the battle raged around him. His ship, Phoenix, weaved through the chaos, dodging enemy fire and returning it with precision. His crew moved with practiced efficiency, every action done with a single goal: to survive and to win. Lian's ships danced through the battle, hitting Council targets with pinpoint accuracy, their movements fluid and deadly. On the ground, the rebels fought with the same ferocity. The Katran warriors led the charge against the Council's ground forces, their powerful bodies cutting through enemy lines. The gnarled diplomat, though not a fighter by trade, had taken up the cause, organizing the civilians of Yovara to assist in the defense. It wasn't just soldiers fighting today. It was every person who had once lived in fear, every person who had once believed they were powerless. The battle stretched on for hours. The Phoenix and the other rebel ships took heavy damage, but they fought on, refusing to surrender. Elias could feel the tide shifting. The Council's fleet was larger, but the rebels fought with passion, with everything they had. Every inch gained was a victory. Every ship downed was a message to the galaxy. But just when it seemed like victory was within reach, the Dominion unleashed its full power. A massive energy cannon, one capable of destroying entire planets, powered. Up it was aimed directly at Yovara. Elias's heart stopped. The Council had been prepared for this. They knew the rebels would make their stand here, and they had one last weapon to ensure their victory. "No," Elias shouted. "We can't let them destroy Yovara." With a deep breath, he made his decision. The Phoenix raced toward the Dominion, weaving through the chaos of the battle. He knew this would be his final move, the final chance to stop the Council. He activated the ship's full thrusters, pushing the Phoenix forward at maximum speed. "Captain, what are you doing?" Leon's voice crackled over the comms. "I'm ending this," Elias said, his voice determined. "This is our chance. If we don't stop the Dominion now, we lose everything." The Phoenix shot forward, its hull vibrating with the power of its engines. The Dominion turned its massive cannon toward Yovara, but Elias was already there, ramming his ship into the heart of the Council flagship. The impact sent shock waves through the space around them, and a brilliant explosion lit up the stars. The Dominion's cannon was disabled. The Council's flagship was crippled. The battle continued, but the momentum had shifted. The Council's fleet faltered. Rebel ships, now emboldened, took advantage of the chaos. One by one, the Council's warships fell. The people of the galaxy had seen what Elias and the rebels were capable of. They had seen the strength of unity, the power of defiance. The final blow came when the Phoenix exploded, taking down the Dominion in a fiery burst. Elias's sacrifice had given the rebellion the victory they needed. The galaxy was no longer under the Council's control. The rebellion had won. The Council was no more, and Elias's legacy would live on forever. The people of the galaxy were free, and they would never again be ruled by fear. The stars had been set on fire, and they would shine brighter than ever before. Thank you for allowing me to take you through this journey. Let me know if you'd like any changes or more stories.